Welcome to the Siembra Sessions podcast, where we explore the powerful stories of artists, activists, game changers, and community builders. Here we dive into the inspiration behind their impactful work. This platform is dedicated to empowering new creators, helping them understand that true change begins when we fully see and express ourselves. Join us as we uncover the visions and voices that are reshaping our world. Today, we delve into the life and legacy of a woman whose story is not just inspiring, but truly transformative. It is my immense pleasure to introduce someone who's not only a powerhouse in the realm of empowerment and leadership, but also one of my dearest friends, Nancy Ruffin. From the bustling streets of New York City, Nancy has carved a path that's both impactful and inspiring, with the foundation built on a BA in accounting at Baruch College and an MBA in healthcare management from the University of Phoenix. She has risen through the ranks of becoming a revered figure in healthcare leadership, while simultaneously building bridges for others to follow. Most recently, Nancy founded the Nancy Ruffin Success Academy for personal and professional development to help women step up, show up, and take control of their lives. The Success Academy is for entrepreneurs, coaches, service providers, and professionals who are stuck or unsure about their next steps. She's a celebrated author with 4 award-winning books that have touched the lives and has a voice that resonates in communities of women of color. Nancy is the visionary behind the umbrella organization, Fierce Women Collective, an organization that is a beacon of hope and empowerment for women across the globe. Under her leadership, TFW has transformed from a mere idea into a vibrant community offering workshops, initiatives that sharpen minds and shape futures. Currently, Nancy serves on the National Board of Directors for 100 Hispanic Women's National Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that strives to eliminate obstacles and encourage Latinas to be innovative, maximize their potentials. Her speaking engagements are nothing short of legendary, with audience at institutions like the FBI, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Hispanicized Conference, and Google hanging on to her every word. She's not just a speaker, she's a storyteller who weaves wisdom into every narrative, driving change and sparking innovation wherever she goes. But what truly makes Nancy extraordinary is her unyielding dedication to the concept of Sankofa, a beautiful principle that teaches us to reach back and uplift as we climb. Her life's work is a profound testament to this belief as she tirelessly works to elevate the communities around her, ensuring that every woman who crosses her path is better for it. Nancy, having you here is not just an honor, it's a celebration of our friendship, achievement, and the fierce pursuit of purpose. Let's dive deep into your journey, exploring milestones to your incredible career, and uncovering the lessons that have shaped you into the leader you are today. Welcome.
Listen, I need a copy of that bio. Like, oh my gosh. I'm sitting here listening, and it's incredible that when you commit yourself to doing the work, you're not thinking about legacy. You're not thinking about the legacy that you're creating. And so as I sit here and I'm listening to you read all of these different things that I've done over a span of years, I think just in that moment, it reminds me of how important it is for each and every one of us to just step bravely into the thing that you want to do at that moment. Like, because all of those things didn't happen at once. I met you on this, in Capicool. I was doing poetry when I met you. And when I met you, none of that other stuff had manifested yet. And it just leaves me with like this, wow, I've only always dared to dream and then followed it through, not even knowing how to do things sometimes. So I need a copy of that bio, by the way.
You got it. You are an incredible inspiration to me. It's really interesting how our relationship is manifested because we have collaborated, we've coached each other, we've been friends during like crazy times in our lives. Like we've talked to each other about personal things, but because you haven't coached me in the realm of how you do it with the Fierce Women Collective.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means like to be part of that collective, but I know what it means to have you in my corner. And I'm very lucky because obviously you coach women, you don't really coach men. So I'm open to having that dynamic between us. And I feel very lucky being one of the few. So I'll say that. So,
well, I appreciate it. I also, I appreciate you too, George, because I think that what makes you different from most is that you are really centered on community, and you've provided a platform for so many successful artists that are out now that I won't name, but there's many out there that I think I don't want to say owe their success to you, but they owe the platform that you provided that has allowed them to kind of achieve the level of success that they have achieved. Because I know that you did it for me, you did it for so many other women that I came up with, along the genre of poetry when I was really just kind of trying to find my voice. And so today, like, we see so many artists who are successful writers that have published books that are out there, doing incredible work. And I think that you don't get the recognition that you deserve a lot of the times. And not that you do it for the recognition, right? We don't ever do it for that. But I also feel like it's important to give those people their flowers, while we can, and just letting you know how impactful you have been in the New Yorican arts community.
I appreciate that. I think it's important and it's not important. And I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, and one of the things that really stands out to me is when people when people benefit from you secretly, and then they go out and they honor other people for what your role was in their life. And that's been very difficult for me. And I've been dealing with that for years. When you're dealing with so many people, it's really hard to keep track of what's said and what's not said. And, I've seen instances where people have written books and I know what they're referencing and I'm conveniently absent from that. So it's something that I deal with all the time, but let's start in a different place. Let's start kind of where we first started working together. There was a very, very interesting goal that you had. And that goal was to be the Latina Oprah. So I want to start there. The reason why I want to start there is because I want to talk about how we plant seeds for things that are audacious. And I thought that was, when I heard you say that for the first time, I was like, I could see it, but I'm like, why does she see it? And this is a question I've been wanting to ask you for years. How did you see yourself being the Latina Oprah and why?
I've always been a dreamer. I think I've always been very bold from like chiquita. I've always kind of just never been afraid to put myself out there. And I'm also the type of person that if I put it out into the world, then it's also making myself accountable for stepping into that dream. And so for me, when I thought about my life, when I thought about the things that I was doing, and when I thought about the things that I wanted to do in the future, for me, it's like, who is living the dream that I would like to live? Like, who is the GOAT in that field? And at that time, and I think still till today, for me, it is Oprah. When I think about how she started in journalism, when I think about the things that she had to overcome in her personal life, her battles with, her weight, when I think about how she pours into her communities, she's very philanthropic, and, she created this media empire, like all of the things. And for me, she was it, and at the time, I was really focused on my writing. I was doing the poetry. I was publishing books. A short time after that, I delved into the world of podcasting. I started putting out a podcast, and I was like, you know what? This is who I want to be like. And that was the first thing. And then you said something to me. I don't know, somewhere along that journey, you had said something to me to the effect of like, I want you. I don't want you to meet Oprah. I want Oprah to want to meet you. Or there was something that shifted my mind that said, you know what? He's right. And I needed to think bigger. So then like I started saying, yeah, I branded myself as the Latina Oprah. But then there came a point where I was like, you know what? I don't want to be another Oprah. I want to be the first Nancy Ruffin. And I think that mind shift really came from you planting that seed that led me to believe that I could be bigger, that I didn't have to, that she didn't have to be the ceiling for me, that if I wanted, I could surpass that. And then what does that look like? Like what is the work that then I would have to kind of start doing so that I can not just kind of go in her lane, but also create my own path, And so, yeah, so for a long time, I branded myself as Latina Oprah. It used to, I think, upset people that I was, I don't know, audacious enough to think that was a possibility for me, that I was bold enough to say it out loud, like, how dare she? And I've never really cared what people said about me, But then until that shift happened with you, I stopped using it because I was like, I don't want to be the next anyone. I want to be the first me, and I want to step into that, and I want to own that, and hopefully I want to inspire someone that's coming up, and looks at me and says, I want to be like Nancy, or I want to pave that way and be that inspiration for someone else.
It's crazy because they always tell us niche down, like, marketing talk. They're always talking about who are you talking to, who's your buying persona, etc. And I know that for you, it's never really been quite financial in terms of like the work that you do. I've seen you do work at scale in a place where it's not profitable for anybody. But because you have a career and because you've been able to pour into other people, talk to me about your ideal client, like your ideal, like the person who walks in and the one that makes you say like, Mama, I can help you. I got you.
I always, when I think about why I started doing this work, I really started doing it for myself first. And so my ideal client is the woman who has managed to check off all the boxes, right? Because from chiquita, we have these seeds planted in our minds as women, as Latinas, of what we're supposed to do or what we're supposed to accomplish in life. And for me, it was always go to school, get a degree, make sure you get into a successful career where you can earn good money. You don't have to depend on a man. But then there was also the part, get married, buy a house, have kids, like all those things. And I was 30 years old and I had checked off every single thing on the box except for have children. That was the last thing. And at that time, I didn't want children. But so I had checked off everything. And I still felt unhappy. I still felt unfulfilled. And it was because I was living a life that society told me that I needed to live. I was doing all these things. And in that process, I had abandoned my passion for writing, for storytelling. And that was what I focused on, and I said, how can I get back to the core of who I am before the world told me that I needed to do this and I needed to be this in order to be successful? And so I started my own healing journey, and I started working with Gloria Rodriguez. She's someone that I think, like, I owe so much of the work that I do to Gloria, because she was the first person who modeled the work that I wanted to do. But I didn't even know I wanted to do it until I worked with her, and I benefited from the work that she was doing that allowed me to kind of reconnect with my source, with who I was. I reconnected with my spirituality, and it really started to sprout these new dreams and visions, inside of me that were apart from what the world was telling me that I needed to do. And so my ideal client is the woman who finds herself at that crossroads in life where they feel like they've done it all, or maybe they're not sure what their next step is, but there's something missing and they don't know what that thing is. And so for me, it's like, I want to help them get back to the core of who they are so that they can identify that thing, reconnect with their purpose, and really and truly create a life that is meaningful to them, whatever that may look like. There's some people who are motivated by money and getting the bag, and that's all great. There are other people who are not motivated by that. There's people who are motivated by impact and how they can serve others and how they can help the world. But sometimes they don't know how to get to the bag or how to provide the impact. And so that is kind of where I come in, using the tools that I've learned throughout my own journey, and then of course other things that I have learned just through my career, through the work that I've done with other women, and my own continuing education, right? Because I wholeheartedly believe that we should all be students forever. Like, you should never reach the point in your life where you feel like you know it all. Like, no one knows it all. There's always something to learn, and there's always someone you can learn from. And so for me, that's my ideal client, the woman that is looking for more and they're not sure where to start or how to get there.
And that's incredible. What do you think is the most common thing that you see? There's trends. There's always trends in everything, right? And data really matters. What are some of the trends that you see?
I think the most common thing, honestly, is it's not even something that's tangible, is that women don't believe that they deserve it. And they don't believe that it's possible for them. So really the most common thing is mindset, and cultivating that inner belief system that tells you you can do and you can achieve anything. You just have to believe it for yourself. And the reason why they don't believe it really stems from either childhood experiences or maybe experiences that they've had within like in a school setting. Like, if you're in school and you get a teacher that is constantly telling you that you can't do something or making you doubt yourself, we start to internalize these messages that are given to us by people who we trust. And whether that's, a teacher, whether that's your family, your inner family nucleus, your parents, your caretakers, maybe it's a partner. A lot of women, find themselves in toxic relationships. And sometimes the way that their partners talk to them can start to break them down. And then it starts to affect what they believe about themselves and how they show up. And so they find that they get to this point where they don't believe it's possible, where they see it's possible for everyone else, but in their mind, it's like, no, there's no way that I can do it. And so I think that that's really the most important thing. And even from women that I've coached, they come in with the best of intentions. They want to do the work. They want to really transform their lives. But until we work on the mindset first, it doesn't matter what I tell them to do. It doesn't matter the tools that I give them. Nothing is going to work until they start to believe it for themselves.
When was the first time that you felt you deserved something?
I've always felt like I've deserved it. And I owe that to my family. I owe it to my parents, honestly. From young, they instilled in me and my sister, like, there's nothing you can't do. Like, you can do anything. You deserve everything that you work hard for, right? It was always tied to hard work. Like, nothing was ever given. And so I always knew if I work hard, then I can achieve anything that I want. And then there comes a point where I started to realize I don't necessarily always have to work hard if I'm working smart. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, how can I make this process better? How can I improve it? How can I become more efficient? But I've always felt like I deserved it. And I think it's because I always had that inner voice from my parents that were telling me that I could and that there was nothing that was impossible for me. I always had their support. Like, no matter what I wanted to do, my father was like, all right, go ahead, try it. And he always supported it. There was never this thing where you can't, and I think that same mindset and belief system is what I instill in my own girls. And I see it in my own children because they're not afraid, and even when they start to kind of doubt themselves, I'm like, no, you got this. And you're never going to know what you can do until you try. So you got to go and try. And if you fail, that's okay. Get back up, try again. Everyone that has ever done anything or succeeded has failed at least once. And if they've never failed, then they've never tried. So it's all about the way that you talk to yourself, the way you talk to your children. And I can't say that I've ever felt like I wasn't worthy of anything.
Wow. And your vulnerability really shines even like through Instagram, like when you do your live videos, your interviews. I've witnessed a dozen interviews where you've gotten very vulnerable about your journey. You've actually inspired vulnerability in others to really tell the truth about this, because in this marketing space, and I'm not categorizing you as a marketer, but there's a certain level of marketing that goes into what you do to be successful. And that culture, that current culture in marketing, puts us in a place where we consistently showcase and curate success on our timelines. And we don't talk enough about the things that are obstacles, right? So we don't get to learn as much from the people that we admire. I think that you've done a really great job at cultivating that type of vulnerability. But let's talk about the first time that you went on Instagram and shared a story that maybe wasn't what you've seen on your timelines with the people that you look out for.
I don't know if I can remember like a specific time, but I know I'll go back to like my journey as a writer. And when you're writing and when you're seeking to get published, those rejections, when they come, they can make you feel like you're not worthy, right? Because there's nothing more vulnerable than writing, especially if you're someone who writes poetry that comes from a very personal place. I also used to write, personal narrative essays. Everything I write comes from a personal place. And so the first time, I think for me, dealing with like rejection was when you submit and you think that your work is great, and they're like, no, like, it's not there yet, or we're sorry, but it's not going to fit our publication. I would say that process at first was really hard, but then what I recognized, or what I started to learn, is that with every rejection, if they would go through rejections, they would give you feedback on what you needed, or on what needed more developing, or the reason why they didn't select it. And sometimes it's not because your writing wasn't good, it's just it doesn't align with the publication. And so when you start to kind of put yourself out there, it helps other people accept their own, I don't want to say failures, but their own moments of rejection, because everyone goes through it. There's nobody in life that has never been rejected. And then fast forward, I think the first time that I got really vulnerable was when I shared my journey with trying to conceive and trying to be a mother. And again, that's really personal. I wrote a lot about that. And I think writing about it really helped me talk about it, right? Because you get the opportunity to get all of those emotions out on paper, and it's almost like a release. And then, on my Instagrams, and I've talked about it publicly many times at my events and speeches. And I'm at the point where I can talk about it now and not get emotional. And also because I have 2 kids now, so I don't have that desire. Like now I'm a mother, but when you don't have something and when you long for something so much and you don't get it, and you see other people getting it, like I was so angry, so resentful. You would hear these stories on the news about these mothers that have children, they abandon them, they hurt them. And I'm like, I had such a contentious relationship with God too at one point, because I'm like, yo, really, God? Like I would be the great mother, and here you are blessing. But when I shared that story, and I'll share this personal story. I was invited to speak a couple of years ago at this event in Manhattan, and I shared that motherhood journey. And right after that, I had this young woman come up to me, and she confided in me her own struggle with trying to conceive. And so I spent some time with her, and I talked to her, and I shared a little bit more personal details with her. We connected, we became friends. And I used to tell her, you just got to stay faithful, but also do your part, right? What does that look like when you're trying to conceive? That means you go to the doctors. They're there for a reason. You make sure you're getting all of the exams done, making sure that the things that are supposed to be working are working. Like there's so many things that in the manifestation of our own dreams, we have to be active participants in. Like I wholeheartedly believe in God and Jesus and making all the miracles, but we have to be active participants in that process. And so fast forward a few years later, I'm now in this new space in my life. I gave my life back to God. I'm doing these Bible studies, and she joins my weekly prayer. And for like a few cohorts, we're praying for this girl. We're praying for her to have a baby. And 2 years ago, she had her first baby. Oh. Right now, she's pregnant with her second child. And so I say all that to say that me being vulnerable and sharing my own story allowed for her to embrace her own vulnerability, to embrace her own process of whatever she was feeling during her own journey, and to now come to a place where she is living out the dream that she prayed for. And so when we come from a space of vulnerability, we give other people permission to do the same in their own lives. And for me, I'm always about how am I showing up in a way that is honest and authentic. And to do that, I have to show people who I am, not just the highlight reel, but also the things that I struggle with, and it's not pretty sometimes. And listen, you're not going to catch me on my Instagram crying in tears, because I also do believe that there's like a fine line, you know, and no shade to anyone that does that. But that's just not me. Like if I'm going to be tears, boohooing, I'm not going to jump on my Instagram to do that. If it happens as a result of a story that I'm saying, then it's different. But there's people that will jump on just to show their tears. Like I'm not going to do that. If it happens while I'm communicating something, yes. But there's also, you have to set boundaries, you know, and I also have to keep some things for myself. You know, you can still be vulnerable without giving everybody everything that you have.
So, and I'm so happy to see that you're actually out here giving hall passes and writing permission slips for people to be their true authentic selves, right? And in that vein, you spoke a little bit about your spirituality and the range that you've expressed publicly. You know, going from somebody from like the Almas Institute to now doing Bible study. That's a big range. You know, shout out to Gloria Rodriguez, que yo la quiero mucho. Bendición si lo está viendo. Gloria is amazing. Amazing person in the community. How do you transition, and how do you deal with people who can't take the ride?
I always have to be true to myself first, right? And if I allow myself to think too much about how I'm going to be perceived, or if I'm going to be accepted, then I'm not going to be acting from an authentic space. Then in that instance, I'm going to be moving based on what I think people want to see from me. And that becomes exhausting. And that's not the kind of life I want to live. And so like, I love Gloria Rodriguez. I love the work that she does. Faith-wise, like our faith differs. You know, she is not a Christian. She practices a different faith. But does that mean that I love her any less? Does that mean that she didn't teach me a lot of things? You know, she really helped to reconnect me with myself. And a part of that was me recognizing what I needed in my own life. And I always act from that space. And I've learned that when you do that, you are going to piss some people off, because there were people that followed me and connected with me because I was doing a certain thing. And then when you change, or when you shift and you transform, they may not be aligned with the new version of you. And for me, that was hard. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm going to, you know, because I'm so big on community, that it was difficult when I started to lose certain connections, because it was like, all right, I'm changing and I'm shifting, but who I am at my core is still the same person. But I started to realize that it wasn't even about me. It's about the other person. And sometimes when we're growing and shifting, that can also be a reminder to others of how they're still the same. And that can be uncomfortable, you know? And so I just try to honor myself. And I think, you know, the other day I posted on my Instagram stories, I wanted to understand from my followers, the ones that I currently have, the new ones, the old ones, like, why are you still here? Like, why did you start following me? And why are you still here? And then one person was like, well, I started following you from your writing days, because you used to share a lot of writing. And now I'm here because of the inspiring messages that you share. And that just, for me, reminded me like, okay, everyone from the beginning is not here, but the people that are supposed to be here are here. And when you operate from a space of authenticity, what happens is you make space for all of the people that you are called to serve. Because I'm not here for everybody. Like, I know that. But if I pretend to be somebody, then you know what I'm doing? I'm attracting the fake people, the people that are going to be attracted to me because of the persona that I'm putting out there, versus attracting the genuine people who want to connect with the real me. And so for me, it's always about honoring the seasons of my life and allowing myself to explore whatever that is. Like, I've shifted and transformed so much these last 15 years. And I'm grateful that I've been courageous enough to do that, because so many people are afraid, they're scared to do it. And at some point, at the end of the day, I have to be at peace with myself. And so for me, it's like, is this bringing me peace? Yes, I continue to do it. If it's not, if it's filled with drama and too much turmoil, like, then I got to let it go. That goes for people too.
Speaking of which, because I really want this podcast, when I developed the concept for this podcast, I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to make it more universal, because I'm very well known for creating Latino projects, right?
Yes.
I wanted it to be more of a human project, so I don't have any limitations on who I talk to and why I talk to them. I think we could all learn from everybody, right? And in that vein, I want this to be more of a masterclass type of conversation. So every time I have a guest here, I want them to learn something from the people that I'm talking to. I want them to learn something beyond the anecdotes, beyond the stories. I want them to hear like definitive action they could take. So I want to talk a little bit about boundaries, because what you just expressed in your transformation spiritually and who you are online, I'm sure that you've had to enforce a lot of boundaries along the way. So this question is going to be more like talking to the audience, talking to that woman that fits your niche, right? I want you to tell them when and how they should enforce boundaries in their lives, both professionally, personally, however it applies.
The first thing that people have to get comfortable with is saying no. Like, just practice practice saying no. And it's one of the things that I do with the women that I coach, because as women, we have been conditioned to take care of everybody else first. And we are supposed to put ourselves last. Even in the household, we cook the dinner, we serve everybody first, we make sure everybody eats, and then if there's something left, we get to eat. You have to get comfortable with saying no and not feeling guilty about it. And so there's so many ways that you can say no respectfully if you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, but also no is a complete sentence. And if someone gets offended by your no, then I invite you to kind of interrogate that and ask yourself, why is this person upset? Because I'm setting boundaries on my own time, on my own mental health, on my own well-being. And then ask yourself if this is a person that you want to have a close relationship with, because people who care about you are going to care about your health, and they're not going to push you beyond what you're telling them you cannot do. And so I think that that's the first thing. When you want to set boundaries, you really have to get comfortable with saying no. And you can practice saying no with small things, because the first no I found is always the most difficult. It's the hardest. But the more you say it, the easier it gets. And then eventually you start to teach people what you're willing and not willing to do. And if you're someone who has always said yes, historically said yes, and you start to set that boundary, it's going to be hard at first because they're not used to that. They're not used to you saying no. But that's their problem. It's not your problem, right? I like to say that's a you problem. It's not a me problem, and they will figure it out.
Yeah. Do you ever have, or did you ever have trouble understanding if in any particular moment you were living as the protagonist in your dream, or you were playing a supporting role in the dream of somebody else? Because I believe that there's these moments.
I don't.
No, go ahead. Start again.
No, I think because life doesn't happen linear, right? It's phases and there's different moments. And so I would definitely say that there was moments in my life where I felt like I was putting other people's needs in front of my own, and my own dreams and desires, were going on the back burner, because again, I'm trying to fulfill this societal expectation of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a Latina woman, what it means to be a wife. Like all of those things start to kind of play into how we move in the world. And so there was, I think when I came to my spiritual awakening, when I was 30 years old, I felt like up to that point I was living somebody else's dream, which is why I felt so unfulfilled and why I felt so unhappy. And I don't want to say I was depressed but I was just really unhappy, because I think that depression adds another layer. And I never felt like I didn't want to live. And I never felt any of those other things that kind of get tied to depression, but I just was not happy in my life. And it was because I was thinking about what everybody else wanted me to do versus what I really wanted to do. So I think that we have those moments, and then you have to come to that realization. When you come to that moment and you realize that something's missing and you realize that you're not happy, you have a responsibility to yourself to figure out what makes you happy. Because I could have made a choice, right? We have choices. I could have chosen to stay there, to stay in that space, to continue living somebody else's dream, to continue to being unhappy and miserable. Or I'm not fulfilled. All right, I may not necessarily know what's going to make me happy and fulfilled, but I know this ain't it. So I need to figure it out. And then I started taking action to figure that out. And that required me working with Gloria Rodriguez. I attended one of her workshops. It was a weekend retreat. And then after that, it wasn't enough. I needed more. And I worked with her for an entire year. I invested in myself because I wanted to start to create a different life for myself. And that was what I did. And from that moment on, I started to tap into who Nancy was, what Nancy wanted out of her life. And I started to create that life. But when I did that, that also required a shift in some of my primary relationships, because here I am, I'm married. My husband is accustomed to me being a certain way, doing certain things. And now I'm shifting and I'm different. And so there was tension there, for a while as I'm trying to sprout my wings, but he wants me to kind of stay the same. And you work through those things, right? And we worked through it and we got through it. And I have to say that now, I'm like an eagle soaring because I'm doing what I love. He supports me. I couldn't do half of the things that I do if it wasn't for his support, because I have kids and there's demands and there's responsibilities in the household that if he didn't help and he didn't support, I would have to figure out a way. But I don't have to, because he's my partner and I know that I can count on him whenever I need to, go and do an event, whenever I'm getting hired out to do speaking engagements. Like I can say yes because I know I have a partner that's going to back me up no matter what.
That's incredible. That's goals, right?
Yeah, but they're not easy goals to get. You only see, the aftermath of it. When you're in it and you're trying to get there, it's not pretty, but you stick it through and you work it out.
And again, we talked about before, like the curated timelines, and I coach more on the business side of things, even though I consider myself to be quite intuitive, and the people that I work with come from all different walks of life. I do primarily coach women. In a lot of different ways, it makes sense for me to do so, because I connect with feelings and things, and men just simply are not there yet in terms of expressing themselves. And I'm on a growth journey in that realm, and I'm hoping to create stages with this podcast to be able to create spaces for men to be able to be a little bit more vulnerable with themselves, not necessarily publicly, but I want to inspire them to seek out those support circles, right? While I'm doing this,
important because men don't do it.
No, we don't. And I find a lot of inspiration. I was raised by women, so talking to women is easier for me. I was very surprised at myself when I leaned towards getting a male therapist. I leaned towards getting a male therapist. My therapist is incredible. He's the best therapist. I've gone through quite a few over the years. They were all women before. This is my first male therapist. And I feel like we really connect in what matters to me now, right? I think they were good for them, in saying that, the platform that we're creating here is really important for us to create a space where people grow, right? But that we talk about really uncomfortable things. And one of the uncomfortable things that I really want to tackle as I go forward is dismantling this idea of hustle culture. Mm-hmm. Hustle culture, to me, it helped me be successful, but at a price that I wouldn't have paid if I'd known. Like if I really known what the upkeep of that hustle culture would be and what it would cost me in terms of personal relationships and just not being true to myself, I would have definitely rethought my approach to business. And I told a story the other day about how when our company first started, when I say our as collective community, right? Because it's just me. When my company started, I really wanted to help people. I made myself available to help people. I put myself in a situation where I could meet lots of people, and my work was at the time above standard from what I saw in the industry. And I told a story the other day about how I used to go to the Chambers of Commerce meetings, and I would practically close a deal over dinner and drinks, and then walk outside, and the valet would bring my car around, and I would get ghosted by people that wanted to work with me because they didn't think I was successful enough. Mm-hmm. And I went down this rabbit hole of having to rent cars and buy expensive watches and buy clothes that really weren't me, just to be able to do business. And I did so because my family's livelihood was at stake. I did what I thought was right at the time. But in moving towards this journey of Siembra, I want to kind of create a space where we have those conversations and let people know that it's a different time, and that people can be a little bit more vulnerable about who they really are and still be successful and still be able to do. Like today, I wouldn't drive a fancy car, not because I can't afford it, but just because it's not necessary for me. I'm in a different place in my life. And for me, experiences are worth more than material things, right? I say all of that to say, as you look out towards other coaches and you see people out there in the industry that technically are your competitors for people's attention, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the practices that you see out there that you think are, I would say, like the kids say, right? Cringe. What are some of the cringe things that you're seeing out there with coaches? What type of hustle culture do you see on the women's side of coaching? Because we have a thing called bro marketing, right? But What does the toxic cis marketing look like?
So one of the things that makes me cringe every time I see a coach say it or promote it, when someone says, I made X amount of money, I don't know, let's say 6 figures, and if you work with me, I can give you the exact same blueprint that I used to get you 6 figures. To me, I hope people are not that naive, because you can have the same exact blueprint, and it does not necessarily mean that you're going to have the same result, because there's so many other things that go into play there. The first one is mindset. If you don't believe that you can secure a 6-figure bag, it doesn't matter what they give you as far as a blueprint. You're never going to apply it because you don't believe in yourself enough to be able to secure that bag. So whenever I hear that, it really makes me start selling people, and for me, my approach is different. I really want people to just define success on their own terms. And then together, how can we create a game plan for you to achieve your level of success? Because everybody's definition of success is different. So just be mindful, pay attention to what people are saying, and then pay attention to what they're doing, because they can say one thing, but how are they displaying that, right? If someone is making 6 figures, how are they living that out in their lives, right? And also, you can't don't be easily fooled too, is what I'm saying. Like, because what works for one person right, it may not necessarily work for you. So I always tell people, do your due diligence. Even when I have consultation calls with women, I tell them, go out there and before you make a decision, interview other coaches, see what they're telling you, vet them, and then make a decision. And because like you said in the beginning, I do this is my passion work. It honestly is. I'm not doing this work to get rich. I have, I'm lucky enough that I have a corporate job that I love that pays for my lifestyle. So I don't have to try to convince people, to work with me. I want people to work with me that want to work with me. And just because you've heard of my reputation, because you know the quality of my work, because you see how I live my life, like that is really what I want. And I want women that are going to be committed to the process. But let me see, what can I think of? What are the cringy things? There's so many different marketing tools. I just recently started following this one person. I'm not going to say who it is. And, I try to walk a very fine line with my faith and how I use my faith and God in the work that I'm doing. But there are some people that really use it as like a marketing tool. They try to use the name of God in a way to kind of just promote the thing that they're selling. And like, I do believe that our Creator has equipped us with specific gifts and talents, and that we are supposed to use those things to bring glory to His kingdom and to bring people closer to Him. And that is, I try, whenever I use God in my post, I try to keep that at the center. But it's not that I'm using it and I'm trying to make $1, out of that. But like, I see some creators saying, God doesn't want you to be broke. God wants, He wants you to be rich. And if you invest in this program, this is your pathway there. I don't know. I think it's all about messaging. And you can, at least for me, you can tell who's being genuine and who's really just trying to sell something. And then there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like there's a market for everything.
Yeah. Have you ever had
for everything.
Have you ever had a situation where somebody comes into one of your sessions, maybe your free sessions that you have to get people to know you? Do you ever have a situation where somebody comes in and they don't really know about your faith because you're not that out front and center with it, and then they still decide to work with you even though their faith differs?
I have not had that happen to me because in my, I don't know, like my Instagram bio says Christ-led coach. So it's like, if you know, you should at least know. And then one of the first things that I do say when I have the consultation call with them is I tell them a lot of my teachings, a lot of my work comes from a God-centered space. Like my faith is the primary thing. Like I tell them up front because I want them to know I'm not trying to dupe anybody into working with me. And I want them to know what they're getting, like right off the bat. I have had women who have worked with me because of my faith, who have joined like my Bible study, have praised me in all different ways, and then have ghosted me, have blocked me, have gone to, have just cut all ties with me. And like, not really sure why, but I'm at the point where, like I said, I know it's not about me, it's about them, because I've been consistent in who I am and in the way that I show up. So if now there's something happening within them that is causing them to want to completely detach from me, then it's something that they're going through, and they have every right to their own journey and to go through their process. And I don't take it personal, but that has happened to me several times.
So you're better than me because I still take it personally, and it's a part of my healing, right? Because I know that I come from a place where I wasn't really heard as a child, as a young person. I came from a place where I was finding my voice. I first found it with graffiti, being able to let people know I've been somewhere. That's the background theme of my life, right? So then when I get to a place where I'm actually working with people, trying to create things that people need and whatever, it strikes me, in a certain place in my heart when they decide to erase me from the story. And that's been a theme, and it's happened even recently. And I question consistently, like, why does it matter so much to me? And I don't have the answer. And again, this is something that I'm literally going through the process of healing from and trying to figure out if I can get out of that mindset. Because it's been so many times, it's been so many times, and it's been from people that I really like. I don't understand why you get to a place where you had somebody help you, and either you're praising the wrong people or the people you think are going to get you more clout, or you just decide to erase it and you just got it there on your own. So it's like, it's weird. But again, it makes me question myself. Like, why do I care so much?
But you know what, George? Think of it this way. Remember, every living being is on their own journey. Everyone's on their own journey. And so if you're on your own journey and you're growing and you're evolving, I think it's natural that we're going to evolve away from some people, or they're not going to be aligned with who we're becoming. Or they could be on their own journey and they could be becoming somebody else. And because they're having other experiences, maybe with other people that are influencing them now, their mindset, their beliefs, it may not be aligned with you, but it's not because of you or what you have done. It's because of that person. One of the things that really helps me center myself in that way is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a book that I read often for that very reason, because if we're not careful, we can allow what other people do affect us and how we view ourselves and how we see ourselves. And I have made a conscious decision that I am not going to allow what other people do to affect how I view or value myself. And so I think that that's something you have to start practicing. Just make a conscious decision that people are going to do what they're going to do, but you have to remain centered on who George is, because you know who you are, you know the value that you bring, you know the work, all of the incredible work you've already done. And if they're not aligned with who you are, that's them. It has nothing to do with George.
I think it's interesting because I'm a storyteller, right? Mm-hmm. And it feels weird. It feels weird to tell a story that means something to me and then have people look at me like, did that really happen? Because I never heard that person talk about it. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of where it circulates with me. And I swear to God, this may not even make the podcast, but like literally it's a place where I'm consistently growing in. And I think I have to reread Don Miguel's book because I think that it might be helpful, because it definitely is something that I've been talking about consistently in therapy and with friends about, like, why does it matter? Hold on one second. I don't know. Is it continuing? It's going past the hour. So, okay. Vamos a seguir entonces. Yeah.
Well,
so
there are certain books that I like to reread often, because you gain new perspective depending on where you are in your life at that moment. So when I read it, 10 years ago, I was reading it with a different set of eyes, with different lived experiences. If I read it today, like I have all these other things that I've lived through already, and you get new revelations out of it. So it's like, that's one of the things, one of the books that I reread often, because I have to remind myself that it's never about me. It's about whatever that other person is going through in their own life and their own experience. And they're just trying to filter it through their exchange with me. And so I've learned to kind of put that boundary, like a boundary there that reminds me, it's not me, it's them. And I wish them well, and I let them go. And I say, thank you for the time that you've been in my life. Let's see who's the next person that God is going to place in my life for whatever reason, either for me to learn from or for them to learn from me.
Yeah. I love when you're audacious. And I love the stories that you told us so far about, all the different things that you've manifested for yourself over the years. I want to know what's next. I want to know, like, what is the next thing that you have your eyes set on, like your heart set on? Like, where do you want to go?
So, like, I'm getting uncomfortable saying it because Jesus.
That's okay. It's a safe space. Vamos a sembrar.
I don't know. A part of me feels like ministry is next for me. Like, I have this calling. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's that I'm preaching or a pastor. I just feel like I'm being called to, like, spread the word of God in some way. I think I'm doing it. To some extent, like on my platform. But it's like a nudge. It's been there for the past couple of years. I've kind of researched like seminary schools, but like I don't want to spend no more money on education because I already got a ton of student loans, But if that's the next step for me, God will make it happen, and He'll pay the bill. He'll find a way to finance it. I also want to get back into, I'm writing now, but I want to write a devotional because I have just tons of journals already with devotional type stuff. And so I think that that's going to be next for me. I've also, I'm branching out through just like my teaching curriculum. I really want to get into the corporate space to work with organizations to help develop like their next generation of leaders. One of the gaps that I've seen in my own organization is how we take individuals who might be everyday functional employees. They're excellent at their jobs. We promote them into some type of supervisory manager position, but then we don't give them the tools, the training, the resources to be great, effective leaders. And so I'm developing curriculum right now to kind of do that. And my goal is to kind of contract with other corporate organizations where I would come in and help train like these, upcoming leaders, mid-level managers to really tap into their full leadership potential. So those are just some of the things on the horizon for me that I'm actively working on right now.
I love it. And I can see every single one of those things actually happening for sure. This is obviously just like part one, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be a regular. If there's anybody that's going to be a regular on the show, it's you. I also want to let you know that I opened up my platform. Was that?
I got to come back and interview you. I have to come back and interview you on your own show.
I'm with it. I'm totally with it.
I also need to know your story, and your transitions, throughout the years and how you've shifted and you've been able to successfully not just develop this great platform for yourself, but how you have contributed to so many others. So I'm going to come back and interview you on your own podcast. I need to have you on my podcast. Oh, that's another thing. I'm thinking of launching another podcast called Next Level Leaders, where I'm talking to successful leaders and tapping into their brain on what makes a successful leader. So I might be tapping.
So why don't we just do this? Why don't we just do the interview and put it on both podcasts?
Yes.
Does it have to be 2 interviews?
We can do that. Love it.
I'm not selfish. I share.
That's right. You talk about working smart and not hard, being efficient.
Absolutely. Nancy, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being my first guest of this new season of Siembra. For those of you who do not know what Siembra is, definitely I'm going to put some show notes in so you can get an idea of how this all happened. It's an incredible story that seeded in the pandemic. And this is my growth journey. This is me having these conversations is part of my healing. So I want you to understand that when I ask these questions, a lot of these questions I know the answers to because I know Nancy, right? Like in this particular instance, I know the answers to this question, but I think it's important for us to say it out loud as often as possible so that we could increase our reach of the people that we're touching on a regular basis. There are people who, if we help one person from this hour or so that we spent here, it'll have been worth it for me. I'm not worried about the likes and whatever. I'm interested in people creating impact with what they learn. I'm also interested in people taking what they've learned and moving it to somebody else, like teaching it to somebody else and paying it forward. So thank you so much. Thank you. What is the one question that you wish I would have asked? This might be for the pooper reel.
I don't know. Maybe I think something around failure, because so many people are afraid to do things because they're afraid to fail. And I think for me, especially this past year, as I've embarked on my new CrossFit journey, I have learned to embrace failure as the stepping stone to success. So every time, because in CrossFit, what happens is my coaches will tell me to keep pushing myself until I fail. So we keep lifting as heavy as we could possibly go. They keep saying, add the weight. You keep going until you can't go no more, until you fail at that weight. And so being there has really rewired my mind on this idea of failure, because if you're not failing, you're not trying. And every time you push yourself a little bit more, you're one step closer to that success. I mean, I think if anyone can take anything away from this, is to make failure your best friend. Embrace it. Stop looking at it as something bad and really honor it, because every time you fail, you're proving to yourself that you're brave enough to try. And if you can try once, you can try twice, you can try 3 times, and you can keep going until you get it.
I think that should be the theme of our conversation, our next conversation. Let's talk about it. Because I definitely have quite a few failures in my bag.
Listen, I'm here for it. I'll come back as many times as you need me to. It's always fun talking with you. And it's so easy because it's so familiar.
Absolutely. Tú eres mi hermana. Ya tú sabes.
I'm so excited for Siembra Sessions. I'm looking forward to hearing the real life stories of visionaries and creators who have been bold enough to take a chance on themselves and follow through on their dreams. I'm so grateful for George. He is an incredible visionary himself. And if you are looking for inspiration, for insight, for the real deal, for authenticity, then make sure that you tune in, not to just the next episode of Siembra, but to all episodes of Siembra Sessions. Thank you. I'm Nancy Ruffin.